send $75 million worth of non-lethal equipment to Ukraine. According to a senior administration official, the equipment includes 30 armored Humvees and up to 200 additional unarmored Humvees, as well as drones, radios, counter-mortar radar, night vision devices, and medical supplies. U.S. Vice President Joe Biden informed Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko of the plan in a phone call. The latest measures were unveiled following weeks of complaints by the White House that Moscow is sending weapons and troops across the border to Ukraine in support of pro-Russian militias.
The U.S. is to send more non-lethal aid to Ukraine, including unarmed drones and military vehicles, according to Washington officials quoted anonymously. Other non-lethal equipment, such as anti-mortar radars and night vision goggles, has already been sent. The U.S. is also threatening more sanctions after a congressional hearing heard claims that Russia has been flouting the Minsk ceasefire deal by sending more military hardware into Ukraine.
In the last few days, we can confirm new transfers of Russian tanks, armored vehicles, heavy artillery, and rocket equipment over the border to the separatists in eastern Ukraine.
The senior diplomat said parts of eastern Ukraine and Crimea had been suffering a reign of terror. Moscow remains defiant over its annexation of the Black Sea Peninsula. A foreign ministry official said Russia had the right to deploy nuclear weapons in Crimea, although he knew of no plans to do so.
UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, better known as drones. They're big business, especially in Israel. In fact, Israel is the biggest exporter of drones on the planet. And with the UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, better known as drones. They're big business, especially in Israel. In fact, Israel is the biggest exporter of drones on the planet.
There was an announcement from the administration today that an additional $75 million in military assistance would be provided to the Ukrainian military by the United States. This is a continuation of military assistance that has already been provided by the United States. Some $100 or $120 million in assistance has already been provided to the Ukrainian military, and this is obviously a substantial supplement. There are a couple of consequences that we have talked about of providing additional lethal military assistance to the Ukrainian military. The first is that it's likely, I think almost by definition, to lead to greater bloodshed. And the fact is our engagement here and our support for these ongoing diplomatic negotiations is that we're trying to avoid greater bloodshed. So that is one thing that the President's mindful of. The second is that the President's mindful of the fact that there's not a military solution to this problem.
And the U.S. is sending $75 million worth of non-lethal equipment to Ukraine, including drones, radar and Humvees. The move comes after the White House voiced concerns that pro-Russia rebels continue to break the terms of a ceasefire agreement in eastern Ukraine. Earlier, NATO's Secretary General also issued a warning to Russia over its involvement in the region.
I will not go into specific numbers, but what I can confirm is that we have seen and still see Russian presence and strong support for the separatists in eastern Ukraine. We see the delivery of equipment, forces, training. So Russia is still in eastern Ukraine, and they have over a long period provided substantial support for the separatists. And therefore we call on Russia to withdraw all its forces from eastern Ukraine and to respect the Minsk agreement.
Frank, words there from Jens Stoltenberg. Well, so far, more than 6,000 people are thought to have been killed in the conflict in eastern Ukraine.
The UK is interested in strengthening the defense capability of the Ukrainian army. Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond said on Thursday. The pledge came less than a fortnight after British Prime Minister David Cameron announced plans to send up to 75 military trainers to Ukraine to help the army defend against Russian-backed militants. Hammond made the remarks during a visit to Kyiv on Thursday, following meetings with top government officials.
And most recently, the announcement that we will provide military training, military trainers to the Ukraine Armed Forces. And we look forward to making an important contribution to the development of capability of the Ukraine Armed Forces effectively to defend the country.
Hammond added that easing of the sanctions against Russia would not be considered unless Moscow adheres to the Minsk ceasefire deal.
We are clear that the agreements that were entered into on February 12th at Minsk must be complied with in full, and that the only basis for removal of sanctions by the European Union will be the full implementation of the commitments that were entered into at Minsk.
Hammond also expressed broader interest in helping the Ukrainian government's broad reform program, including reforms related to energy and corruption.